This is Ask the Compound. Each week we get hundreds of comments, questions, emails from people. Askthecompoundshow@gmail.com is our email if you want to ask a question. Our list is just exponentially growing of questions. We can't get to them all. We try. So you got to stand out a little bit.
Never ending.
You want to know how you get to get on the show? TLDR. Give me one of those. And then add all the info. Today's show, we're going to be talking about what's the right savings rate you should be shooting for. Should you merge your accounts when you get married? I have very strong opinions on this one. Some advice for a younger advisor who's feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome. How to deal with FOMO when you have a diversified portfolio and you're seeing performance of other things doing better. And then another buy versus rent question, but this one ties into saving and investing as well. Today's show brought to you by the Compound newsletter. Go to thecompoundnews.com. And each week, we're going to give you updates on live events. There just was one this week. Announcements, new merch drops. We will highlight all the shows that we had this week, who the guests were. You'll also see the new TCAF guest for the upcoming show. A lot of stuff going on. Anything you missed, some stuff from people who aren't in the compound. Like, hey, here's some friends of the compound, what they've been writing. It's a great way to keep up since we have a lot of content here. We are a content machine.
Yeah, you're going to miss out if you don't have the newsletter.
Yeah, hard for people to keep up. So check out thecompoundnews.com/subscribe for more. All right, let's do it. Duncan is quick turnaround from a live show in LA. Everything went great?
Yeah, it was a great event. Met a lot of really cool people. We always have the best, fans. So people who come out for stuff like that. It is
fun to meet people in person.
So. And yes. Cliff, for instance, in the chat right now, Cliff was there in the flesh, in person. So, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yep. Also met I'm not going to name them because I don't know if they'd want me to, but we had a pretty famous photographer in the crowd. So I thought that was pretty cool. I recognize them.
You could say their name and I probably wouldn't know them. But
yeah,
for you, that's big, right?
Yeah. No, I was kind of starstruck. So, yeah.
By a photographer. Okay. Hey, yeah. Different things. All right. Let's do it. Get to the questions.
All right. Up first today, we have a question from Marag. On this week's show, you discuss lifestyle.
Yeah, we actually have a couple of questions this week from people internationally. Which is cool to see.
Yeah, I love that. So this first one is, on this week's show, you discuss lifestyle creep, and that one way to mitigate it is by maintaining your savings rate. Are you aware of any frameworks on how to determine a ballpark target savings rate? Every year, my wife and I create an annual budget that outlines the actual cash we receive from our paychecks, an annual bonus after 401k, taxes, etc. We set a target savings rate and then allocate the rest of our major spending categories. We've triangulated around a target of 17 to 20%, but I'm curious if there are any rules of thumb or anything else that can help us validate it. I may be overthinking it because that percentage range seems to work for our lifestyle, but it's always nice to have something to anchor to. They sound like they're really on top of things. I have never once done anything like that.
Yeah, most people, I think, that send us questions, a lot of them are on top of things. Just a lot of times people, again, my biggest thing is always, am I going to be okay? And that's just, people want just reassurance a lot of times. So personal finance experts hate lifestyle creep. This is something they harp on all the time. But I think it's impossible to avoid. If you make more money, you should spend more money. It's a sign of progress. I'm okay with lifestyle creep as long as there's savings rate creep as well. And the easiest way to do this is just to keep your savings rate similar. If you save 20% when you make 50 grand, save 20% when you make 100 grand, right? The pie is just getting bigger. So, I mean, that sounds obvious, right? But I think it's easy to fall into a trap of increasing your spending and not increasing your savings rate commensurately, right? It does sound like this person has it all figured out. They have an annual budget. They use the word triangulating, which I never use in my vocabulary, so I think they're already ahead of the game there.
Great word choice. You're legitimate when you drop triangulate. Yeah.
I mean, the thing about savings rate is it is kind of tough because a lot of people ask, like, well, do I do the savings rate pre or post-tax? I'm a pre-tax guy. This sounds like he's using it post-tax, which makes it even bigger than the 17 to 20% that they're saying. So, and then you think, well, is the match for my 401k for my employer, does that count as my savings rate? It depends how you look at these things. Is when you own a house, that's kind of a forced savings mechanism, right? Do you count that as your savings rate? But it sounds like, again, if it works for your lifestyle, I think you're fine. I think one of the hardest parts about finance is that it's just not like physics or like architecture, right? There's no rules that govern the universe of money. When you're making a building or building a bridge, like you have to follow the blueprints exactly, You've seen those news stories, right, where they start a bridge on one side and the other side and they don't meet in the middle. Like, it has to meet in the middle. Right. Finance is not like that. You'll never be afforded that level of precision, unfortunately. And so I think a lot of people have a hard time understanding that so much of long-term financial planning is literally guessing, right? It's educated guesses. I guess there are, like, they're asking for a rule of thumb. The rule of thumb is, you've heard of this 50-30-20 rule. So 50% of your budget goes towards necessities, mortgage, rent, food, healthcare, insurance, Oatly call options. 30% of your budget goes towards wants, desires, travel, restaurants, entertainment. 20% of your budget goes towards savings, and that could be retirement, emergency savings, paying down debt, etc. I honestly don't know where this 50-30-20 rule came about, but it kind of makes sense. And obviously there are exceptions to every rule of thumb, because a lot of it depends on where you live and how much you spend on transport and housing and what the standard of living is where you live. So after years of thinking about this, running different scenarios and some personal experience, I've always settled on, I want people to target a double-digit rate of savings. And once you get to that double-digit, and it can take some time, I think the 15 to 20% is a good goal for most people. I'm not saying you have to. I think that's a pretty good goal. My personal savings rate is probably in the 25 to 30% range. So I'm not like a fire psycho, but it's probably a little higher than most people. I'm somewhere in the middle between, I'm half psycho, half reasonable. And when I first started working, it took me a long time to get
like
to
a
that rate.
stable psycho.
Yeah. I'm kind of like the hidden psycho, right? Mm-hmm. It only comes out at certain times. And since there's no precision in this, my goal is to make it just painful enough where you're saving enough money and you go, gosh, can you imagine if we spent this money on something? How much more we could get for this? We could do this. We could buy this toy. We could get this bigger house, whatever it is. But I also think you should be saving enough where there's a little pain there too, where you go, geez, if we were actually, or you're spending enough. So if you're actually spending some money, you go to yourself, geez, if we were just saving this, can you imagine how much it would be worth in 20, 30 years? So it's a balancing act. And so I think the wonderful thing about having that healthy savings rate is it just means, fewer dollars to replace when you stop working someday. And it's not only the compounding you get, but it's the margin of safety it provides when life inevitably gets in the way and your savings rate fluctuates, right? There's times when our savings rate has been lower and higher. I look back, I think 2021, all-time highs in savings rate for the Carlson family. But we spent some money in 2022 or 2023 on unexpected things, and the savings rate was a little lower. So I think, but you're looking to be somewhere in the margin of error around a certain place. But I think, again, for most people, get it to double digits. This person does 17 to 20%, and they literally plan it out before the year starts. They're in a good spot. You're good. I stamp it.
One day there's going to be a Ben Carlson rule. What is that going to be?
The Ben Carlson rule? My rule is just enjoy some of your money. How's that?
That's good. I like that.
That's my one area that I differ from almost every personal finance person is I think it's okay to enjoy your money.
Also,
and I wasn't always like this.
You brought up Oatly, so I feel like we need to mention they just reported earnings. They had a pretty good earnings. They're up like 16% since. So it's I know some people are only here for the Oatly content. So I just
you're chipping away at it. All right, we're coming back.
Okay. Up next, we have a question from Chad. I'll be getting married this upcoming year, and my fiance and I have started discussing how we're going to combine finances. That's the most romantic part, of getting engaged. One of us makes roughly triple the amount the other does, so it makes the situation a little trickier. We have some ideas, but I'd love to hear an unbiased outside perspective on this. Who do you think makes triple, based on this question?
One of us. Not to brag. Listen, does it really make the situation trickier? I don't know. Look, I know that there are couples who successfully have kept their finances separate. There are definitely people that do that. I'm sure it can work under the right circumstances. But my question is, why make your life harder than it has to be, right? When I play my kids in sports, sometimes we'll play in basketball on the front yard. I'll play with my left hand because, listen, they're like 6, so it's easy to beat them. So I have to give myself, I have to play with one hand behind the back. But do you want to do that in your marriage, right? Because I think the downside of keeping your finances separate is far outweighs the upside of combining them and being on the same team. And sure, it sounds simple enough. Listen, the person who makes 3 times as much, they're going to pay 3 times the mortgage or rent. They're going to pay 3 times the utilities. They're going to pay 3 times the taxes. And we'll just make it, you pay a quarter, I do 75%. Sounds very simple in theory, but Who pays when you go out to eat? Right? What about when you need something for the house? No, we need to do a bedroom set. We're going to split that. Do you get to have 3 times more expensive vehicle than your spouse does? Like, how do you handle vacations? It just introduces so many more potential arguments that
it sounds like you're farming resentment at that point.
That's the thing. Especially if you say, like, listen, I make 3 times as much. Do you think that's really going to go over very well?
Yeah,
I think you're starting at a huge disadvantage. There was actually a study done by the Journal for Consumer Research on this, published last year, and they compared the happiness of married couples who did and did not separate their finances. So they looked at 800 different couples, 300 newlyweds in the first 2 years of their marriage, and 500 married couples who had been together for 15 years plus. And they found couples with joint bank accounts were more satisfied with their marriage, they were more in sync on money issues, they were more transparent with each other about money, and they felt more aligned on money and the quality of their marriage. So there actually is studies and research that backs this up. So I don't know. Again, I'm sure that there's people that have been situations where this has worked. My parents have always told us that they did joint accounts forever, but my mom wanted her own account. So she started her own bank account, like a savings money market account, and she would have a certain percentage of her paycheck go in this account. And she loves to do projects on the house, right? Like every couple of years, well, I need to do this. We need new carpet, and we need to change the drapes here. We need to paint this. And that would be her project fund. And every time it would get big enough, she would do a little project, and it was kind of her money. And my dad, who's more control of the finances, just out of sight, out of mind, and it was hers to control. So I think that kind of thing makes sense to me. I just feel like money is such an emotionally charged topic as it is. Like, why introduce potential landmines and make it even more emotional than it has to be? That's where I kind of draw a hard line on this.
Yeah, it sounds like a recipe for problems to me. Like, yeah, I trying to keep everything separate and right. In proportion to how much you make or something. And it's easier than ever to share too, right? You don't even necessarily have to have a joint account. With Venmo, you can just Venmo money back and forth as one of you needs, for a big purchase or something. It's way easier to share in expenses than ever before.
So Jake in the chat asked, how much is my gym budget? Not that much, Jake, because I use Planet Fitness, $10 a month. Right? I don't understand how it works, but it works.
It's because like 1 out of every 1,000 people that sign up actually goes, I guess.
Yes, I'm like the person at the buffet that gets like you saw Red Lobster is basically going out of business because they did the all-you-can-eat shrimp. I'm the person who eats 12 plates of shrimp because I actually go and use the gym.
Yeah.
Not to brag.
Yeah.
Next question.
Good for you. All right, up next we have a question from Dan. I'm a new financial advisor and looking for some advice. All the advisors at my firm are older and more experienced than me. How do I get older investors to trust me? I feel like I have imposter syndrome and I'm looking for some advice as a younger advisor. This is a common question we get. We get this pretty regularly.
Yes, it totally makes sense, and I get the fact that people have these feelings. Let's bring in a younger advisor who was way younger when he first started with us, Alex Palumbo. Alex, you were 25 when you started with us?
No, Ben, 23. Come on
23.
Now.
Okay, you were 23. You came in, you had a couple of years of experience. You were studying for your CFP when you joined us?
No, not even close.
So you got your CFP after you joined us?
Yeah, I got the CFP after I joined, about 2 or 3 years in.
So you joined us, you had no clients, you're coming with no assets, you were this junior advisor, and it's like, here, we're going to put you under Chris's wing, and he's going to teach you, and you're going to learn everything there is to know about being an advisor. And how many ever years later, how long have you been with us now? 7 years?
8.5, Ben. Come on, give me some credit. 6 years?
Okay. Apparently, I don't know your
I joined like 3 months after you. What are you talking about?
Okay. Apparently, I don't know your backstory as well. Listen, I'm getting
Seriously.
old. So, I think the average age of advisors, it's a gray-haired industry. It's like 55 years old. And a lot of the people that have the most money are gray-haired people as well. And they're also, in retirement or close to retirement because they've had the time to build up the assets. We have some younger clients at the firm, but most people with the most money are older as well. So there is this idea of, geez, I don't have a lot of experience. I'm not a gray-haired person like them. How am I supposed to stand out? What were your feelings when you were just starting out and trying to build a book of business with clients?
Yeah, I actually joined the firm the exact same day as Ask the Compound legend, Bill Sweet, January 17th, 2016. We both walked into the office together. He was like, hi, I'm Bill Sweet. I'm an ex-Army captain. I run my own income tax practice and have my own financial planning business. I'm like, hi, I'm Alex. I'm 23. So yeah, it was definitely a little bit intimidating. I think you bring up a good point where you mentioned like I sat and under Chris's wing for a year. And anyone who has to share an office with Chris Venn for an entire year likes to subject themselves to some level of punishment. But in all seriousness, I think, one thing we can definitely chat about is aligning yourself with a super well-versed mentor who can teach you, educate you, also wants you to do better. That's super important. And I owe Chris everything because I wouldn't be here without him.
Right, and to
I
your credit, you
infinite...
were a sponge, right? You took everything he gave you, and you said, I'm going to follow everything you do to a T, the whole process. You learned the process, the step-by-step process we go and how we work with clients. To your credit, you were like a sponge. And I remember when I have always had a baby face, and one of my first client meetings at Ritholtz, someone said to me, geez, you guys are a lot younger than the advisors I'm working for. And the way that we talked about it, it's not necessarily a spin, but it's true, is your advisor could be retiring in the years ahead. We're going to be with you for the long haul. Did you kind of approach it from that same way of, listen, I'm going to be at this firm for a long time, so I'm ready to be your advisor for a long time as well. You can actually spin it into a positive.
That's what advisors say, young people to say. I'm not sure if any client actually cares about that, to be honest with you. I think that,
I'm going for the spin zone here.
Yeah, that is like classic, like financial advisor fodder.
Well, wait, so are you saying that most clients don't really take into account if they have a super old advisor? They aren't ever worried about that, as opposed to wanting someone younger?
I do think that some clients are concerned about that. I'm not sure if the overarching philosophy of why you should work with me as a young financial advisor should be that, hey, I'm going to be here for a very long time throughout your entire retirement. I don't think that's the optimal way to lead those meetings as a younger.
Well, part of it is also you have to have expertise. You have to know what you're doing.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. So I think that, being a younger financial advisor, listen, I don't think I look that much older than when I first started at 23. And when I first started, a decent percentage of prospective clients that I spoke with, and we weren't even FaceTiming, actually. I was just talking, so I definitely don't sound different. They said, like, hey, like, how old are you? Can I talk with someone older? And that happened a few times, and it's definitely a kick to, the gut a little bit. It didn't happen that often. Now, it hasn't happened in, like, 4 years. And I don't look that much different, and I definitely don't sound different. So to your point, Ben, I think that younger advisors, first of all, what you have to bring to the table is such a high level of technical expertise that you make yourself undeniable to prospective clients. I can answer any question that any prospective client wants to ask about financial planning, but really our firm's processes, our portfolios, investment strategies, and it doesn't matter whether you're 25, 35, or 55 doing that.
Well, that's where you sound really different, is you have more confidence in the process. And
that's another thing I was going to say, is the confidence. You have to have confidence as a younger advisor that what you are recommending is fully in your client's best interest. And if you do that, the confidence exudes itself. If you're walking in concerned about what someone's going to think about you, and then you're not even confident about the investments that you're recommending, I mean, you're drawing dead right off the bat.
And I've heard a lot of younger advisors say that they'll just do whatever the client wants, and that's not the way to do it. You're right. The confidence is a big piece, but it's also having belief in what you're recommending. It's not just the false confidence in this imposter syndrome. It does feel like you've kind of grown up at the firm because you got your CFP. You got married, had a kid, bought a house recently. And so now it's going from zero. How many clients do you have that you work with now?
That's right. Shout out baby James and my lovely wife Megan. Now I work with about 80 to 85 clients and like about 285 million AUM, something like that.
Which is crazy. That's more money than the firm had when we joined.
That's double.
When I joined the firm,
what I have.
When I joined the firm, our entire firm had 250 million in assets. The entire firm.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, you are a big success story for us. So I think that's good for younger advisors to hear because there are a lot of people who are saying, how do I ever get to that point? But you put in the work. That's the big thing.
I remember two things. I remember the first practice call I ever did, Ben, was with you, actually. I took meticulous notes on Chris for months. And I'm like, let me do this practice call. And we recorded it. And you were the pretend prospective client. I listened back to it. Man, that was miserable. So that's a good thing for initial financial advisors to do, or young financial advisors, to like record yourself going through the practice. And secondly, I remember like the first few prospective clients I spoke with, they didn't close. And I remember thinking like, I'm never going to ever get any clients. But you just got to keep grinding.
Reps. Yeah.
You got to put in the reps.
All right, let's do a question that's more...
I was just going to add there, I think imposter syndrome can be a positive too. I think that it's probably a good sign that you are self-aware, that you're not just like completely full of yourself. If you feel like you don't know everything, it's probably a good sign. It probably means you're going to be a better, whatever you are, not just financial advisor, but I think it probably means you're going to be better at whatever you do.
I agree.
Yeah, well said. All right, let's do a question that you might get from a client these days, another advisor one.
All right, up next we have a question from Ryan. All of my clients compare their portfolios to the S&P 500, but their portfolios are far more diversified with bonds, international stocks, REITs, small caps, munis, etc. How do I get them out of the S&P performance chasing mindset? See, I benchmark to TQQQ, so it's a little different for me. But.
All right. Every advisor, most advisors that have the long-term ethos preach that diversification is one of the best forms of risk management, right? You give up on the home runs, but you're also avoiding striking out. Alex, I'm sure you've had plenty of these conversations over the years. How do you help people understand that your portfolio is not just this one part of the U.S. stock market and avoid having that FOMO that a lot of people can't help but get?
Well, this is a really important question, and it obviously comes up all the time with mostly prospective clients, but also real clients. The truth of the matter is, if you want to compare your portfolio's allocation to U.S. large cap stocks with the S&P 500, then that's super reasonable, right? You want to match that or do a little bit better, hopefully, over the long term. That's the whole point. But to Ben's point, when you own a diversified portfolio of 6 to 10 asset classes, you can never compare the return of a portfolio that has 10 asset classes with the best performing asset class of that portfolio, because that makes no sense, and it's always going to underperform.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing about diversification. Is like you're always apologizing for something, because there's always going to be something that's going to lag. And so I think the biggest thing is setting those expectations up front that your portfolio is going to be different because we're trying to manage these risks and match it with your risk profile and your time horizon, not necessarily just beat the U.S. stock market. That's not a goal for anyone that is trying to reach a financial end state, right? It's just not something that really matters to you. You're not a hedge fund manager. You're not a mutual fund portfolio manager. Your goal is not to keep up with or beat the S&P. It's to reach your financial goals.
Yeah, I mean, you can also say a few other things like, what we do for our clients is like hyper tax efficiency. So from a post-tax return perspective, are you beating or matching the S&P 500, right? People only want to look at percentage gain, but like if your entire portfolio has short-term capital gains or unrealized capital gains, then did you really win? Right. And secondly, you really have to learn when you're working with prospective clients who eventually become clients, what did they do in 2022? What did they do in 2020? What did they do in 2018? What did they do in 2017? Do you remember what happened in 2017, Ben?
It was like the greatest year ever, right? Everything went up.
It was a really good year, but emerging markets were the best performing asset class by 10% over the S&P 500. So it's like, was anyone asking about like why my portfolio wasn't completely in the emerging markets at that point? In 2022, was any client really asking, like, when their portfolio was down 10%, but the S&P was down 18, were they like, well, why am I not generating the same returns as the S&P 500? Right. No. This is bull market questions by clients, and it's very toppy, to be honest.
Yes. No, that is true. And the funny thing is that you know which questions are coming during the bull market or the bear market. It's cyclical, just like the market is.
Well, we also do for our clients, Ben, not to hashtag shout out our own firm or hashtag ad, but we have a tactical model, right? So maybe firms, embedding a strategy that has a rules-based way to zig and zag in and out of the market is a good way to reduce volatility, but also capture upside.
Yeah, we call it a behavioral release valve.
We're really good at this, I think.
All right. One more question.
When I hear tactical, I just picture camo. Gotta be honest.
What?
Tactical. Like tactical gear. It's always camo.
Oh, camo. So, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's the Arnold GIF.
Yeah. Last but not least, we have a question from RK.
No,
I'm married, 39 years old, 2 kids, live in the Dallas area with a household income of $300,000 to $320,000 annually. We're living in a 2-bed, 2-bath apartment, paying $1,950 a month in rent. With growing kids, we're deliberating whether to continue renting or buy. We have a combined 401k balance of $395,000. a Roth IRA of $78,000, HSA with $17,000, a brokerage account with $220,000, $21,000 in cash savings, and a pending car loan of $34,000. We are entirely debt-free beyond this car loan. My goal is to save and invest between $125,000 and $140,000 annually.
Now that is a psycho fire savings
rate.
That's
a lot, yeah. Although I can comfortably afford a mortgage of up to $4,500 a month, I'm hesitant about the considerable jump from $1,950 in rent. Would it be more advisable for me to continue to buy or continue renting, keeping in mind my financial goals? P.S. English is not my first language, so I use ChatGPT to organize my question. That's that's a first.
That's a good use of AI. Yeah. I've never heard that before. Yeah. So, yeah, lots of numbers in here. ChatGPT did a pretty good job of organizing. So the idea here is like they don't want to see the lost savings, right? They don't want to see the amount they save in their brokerage accounts and their IRAs and HSAs and all that stuff is going to go down a little bit if they buy a house. The thing that people don't realize is that when you buy, obviously housing is a form of consumption and you end up spending some money. So you're kind of transferring from saving to consuming, but you're also paying that mortgage down and building up equity in the house. So it's not like there aren't any savings going on here. So it's just, it's the loss aversion piece of I'm actually shelling out more money for the mortgage. Can I stomach that? So how do you get people, when this person is obviously in a great financial position, right? And this is something that we talk about with our clients a lot is like, you've saved and you've put money away, like it's okay to enjoy some of it. So how do you get people to change that mindset? Because this is obviously a psychological hurdle more than a financial decision.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with this question. I'm actually not even me. I'm a generative AI form of myself. So AI is really working out very well. Let's see. This person. I just pulled it up on another screen so I could see the question. I'm in Austin traveling with the firm. After we're done here, I'm going to triangulate my way to some Austin BBQ, which is absolutely fantastic. But, okay, let me see this question. So, I mean, I cannot believe that someone's living in a 2-bed, 2-bath apartment with 2 kids.
That's a lot.
When you have the ability to buy a house. This person has to think, okay, I'm able to save $125K to $140K annually. For what? Just to simply have a bigger portfolio? It's like that meme that's like a Facebook product manager with $5 million. He's like, oh, I got $5 million. What's my next goal? To have $6 million. It's like, why are you saving this amount of money? I assume to achieve your financial goals. And what is not the most important financial goal that you're going to have over the next 20 years, if not to buy your family a dream home?
Like improve your quality of life. That's a whole part.
And improve your quality of life. So you have to determine whether, what's $2,500 a month times 12? That's you have to determine whether $30,000 a year of decreased savings is worth it when you compare it with the joy of living in a assumptively very nice house that will drastically improve your quality of life. Me personally, I had a somewhat similar rent and I moved into a house with a somewhat similar mortgage, and the amount of happiness that my new home brings me now as I have a family with children is literally undefinable and exponential. Another important component of this particular person's question is that their income of $300K to $320K annually. What is your income trajectory moving forward? Are you going to be making $350K, $400K in a few years? Meaning, will you be able to make up that $30K difference in like a year or two, and then now you can still save $140K annually while also owning a home? Or are you stuck in a more stagnant job where you're probably not going to get a pay raise? That's another factor for this person.
Right. Someone in the chat just pointed out they're going to be still saving $100,000 a year, give or take, right?
I'll never retire at that rate.
And again, a house is a form of financial asset. There's more consumption involved. There are ancillary costs. That is true. But you're right. If you have kids, this goes beyond the spreadsheets and the savings numbers. And in 5 years, if you're still in this apartment, are you really going to be happier with the quality of life? And these kids are going to be getting bigger, and you're going to be getting more stuff.
Ben is in shambles thinking of having 2 kids in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment.
I can't even imagine.
I know.
I'm in shambles thinking about being able to buy a house for $4,500 a month. But that's like a 1-bedroom condo in New York.
Move to Dallas. Move to Dallas.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, this person, listen, we don't want to dunk on our viewers, but this person is like having his family live in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment.
They're dunking on us. Look at those numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And he's having his kids, I guess, share a room and living in an apartment complex just so we can continue saving 140K versus 100K. Listeners to this channel, thank you for following our content, but you should enjoy your life. Like Ben said in the first segment, enjoy your money. Buy a house. You'll be so much happier. And then because you watch this show and clearly focus on this stuff a lot, you will be financially fine. Relax and buy a house for your family, guy or gal, Jesus.
Yes,
exactly. Kids do really like bunk beds, I have to say. So sharing a room isn't that big of a deal.
Parents don't like putting them together. Yeah, so that's another downside. Okay. Thank you to Alex for tuning in all the way from Austin for us.
Yeah, thanks, Alex.
Appreciate that. You took a break from your barbecue. Duncan, new Common and Friends tomorrow. Is that the live show?
No, it's not. We have a jam-packed week. We have an actual TCAF today recording.
All right. No Duncan on next week's show. He's taking the biggest baby boomer trip of all time and going on a Beatles tour in Liverpool. My dad is so jealous. Right? Is Duncan's mom in the chat today? I bet she's excited.
She is, yeah.
I mean, honestly, my dad would kill for that kind of trip. So Duncan's going to be in Liverpool. He's going to be gone. We'll have Bill Sweet stepping in as the guest host. Remember, email us, askthecompoundshow@gmail.com if you have any questions. Leave a review, rate us, smash the likes, all that stuff. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.